Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And as we start to round off the year and look onward into 2023, there of course are those questions on what the big three have to offer for next year. Now, we do know a little bit of what's going on for the first half of 2023, and it's looking pretty good so far, but there's a little bit of a mystery beyond that, especially for a company like Xbox. Supposedly, they do have a big year planned and everything, and we do know some of the games they're working on. We just don't know when they're exactly going to release. But one of those games might be taking just a little bit longer than what some of us might have hoped, and I'll explain why later on today. Also, we did get a delay that seems to be drawing some concern, specifically with the Nintendo Switch, though fans still on last generation consoles might want to pay attention to this one as well. With all that said, let's just go and jump into our first topic of the day, being about High on Life. This game's been on a lot of people's radar since it was first announced, myself included. I've very much been looking forward to this one. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. And it is also a day one Xbox Game Pass game. You gotta love it. And after a small delay, it is now officially out, which of course includes reviews. It does currently have a 72 overall score on Metacritic as of this recording, with the scores just kind of being all over the place. Some critics do appear to be loving this game, while others seem to kind of hate it. So, it's kind of one of those type of games. It's just a little bit polarizing, which isn't really a bad thing. It really just kind of depends on the person, and in this case, a large part of that is just kind of your sense of humor. This is a comedy first-person shooter where your weapons have their own unique personality, so they're constantly talking to you and everything, though apparently you can't actually change that in the settings if that doesn't really jive with you. But suffice to say, this is one of the main draws of this game. So depending on if the jokes hit home for you, can play a large part in how much you actually enjoy High on Life. Now, as for its gameplay, how does that hold up? It does seem fairly solid. It is a Metroidvania style of game, which, I'm all for that personally. I do love this genre, and I even saw it compared to Ratchet & Clank, where its gameplay is mainly focused on how creative you can be with your weapons. Now, to me, that sounds like a winning combo, but nonetheless, this game is available in Xbox Game Pass, so definitely go check this one out if any of this interests you. I'll probably check this one out myself here in the coming days. There's just so many games out right now, it's kind of hard to catch up with everything, but let me know in the comments below on whether or not you've been enjoying this game if you've played it thus far. Next up here, let's go and talk about Unreal Tournament. Now, I believe this is actually the first time I've gotten a chance to talk about Unreal Tournament on this channel, which is honestly kind of a shame. Unreal Tournament 3, it was legitimately one of my favorite games back during the PS360 era, and even just a few years ago, I'd play the new Unreal Tournament on the Epic Games Store. It's still a blast to play today, and you really don't see games like this made anymore. Unfortunately, though, depending on who you are, Epic Games has shifted pretty much all of their focus on the Fortnite. I get it, it's super popular, but I still love me some Unreal Tournament. So I'm very happy to let you all know that Unreal Tournament 3X is officially going completely free to play with no microtransactions whatsoever. It also includes crossplay with Steam, the Epic Games Store, and even GOG, which is, very nice to see. Seriously though, go check this game out if you like competitive arena shooters. Even all these years later, it's still a unique competitive experience with fast-paced first-person shooting, creative and unorthodox weapons, and the inclusion of some really over-the-top vehicles. I still think that this game is an absolute blast. Alright, so let's go and talk about what's happening with Xbox, and for the first time in a while, this is not Activision Blizzard related. It feels kind of nice, honestly, but instead this is about one of their most anticipated first-party games, being Fable. This game was in the rumor mill for a long time, and then they officially announced it back in 2020. The thing is that since then, we've gotten pretty much zero meaningful updates, and according to a new report by Jez Corden, which has a pretty good reputation, there might actually be a reason for that. Now, he didn't go into great detail or anything like that, but in an article posted up on Windows Central, he did suggest that from what he's heard, Fable's slow progress in development is linked to Microsoft and Playground Games opting to use their own in-house engine, being presumably the Forza Tech engine. Now, the thing is that Playground Games, they already have knowledge about this engine and everything. They do use it on the Forza Horizon series, so that's why they're using it here. But of course, that's a racing game, whereas Fable, this is an open world RPG. So that's something that fans will have questions about. How will that transition over to an open world RPG? But that doesn't really seem to be the main issue here. I know some people, they're going to kind of jump to that conclusion, but I want to go ahead and clear things up before we get any further. In no shape or form does any of this mean that Fable is struggling in development or that they're having some type of quality problems. So just go and kind of clear your head of that. There's no reason to be concerned as of right now. Now, maybe later on, but as of right now, everything seems to be going perfectly smooth. We've heard from both Phil Spencer and Matt Booty express just how excited they've been over what they've seen so far. They've consistently talked about this as being one of the most anticipated games, and by all indication, Fable's development is going smooth. But the issue that we speak of today is not about quality, but rather about how far along this game is in development and when fans can actually expect to play it themselves. We are hearing that its development has been a little bit on the slower side of things, and the reason for that is because of how AAA game development works, especially when it comes to Xbox. With a lot of these big games, and we've seen this especially when it comes to Xbox, there's a lot of contract work that happens. Now, the reason that that's important is because they're reportedly using this new in-house engine, which, that's fine for full-time employees. They can learn this and just kind of keep going. But that also means for these contractors and new workers, they have to come in and learn a completely new engine that they've never used before. That's where Unreal Engine is a boon, because most developers anymore, they know how to use Unreal Engine. And that's why games that uses Unreal Engine can bring in contractors with no slowdown whatsoever. In this case, though, contractors come in, they have to learn a new engine on the job, and then when their contract is up, they move on mid-development. And then the next person has to come in and do the same thing. It's kind of this revolving door that makes development slower. The same thing has reportedly been happening with Halo Infinite. They use their own in-house engine for that game as well. I believe it's the Slip Space engine. I can't remember the name. But while Halo Infinite is a high-quality game with an excellent story campaign, its slow development has kind of caught up with it. Its multiplayer needs more content. Now, to be fair, Fable is a solely single-player experience, so it's a completely different situation here. It's not going to rely on those constant updates. But ultimately, as long as the quality is there, that's the most important thing. But I think with this news, and that's why we're talking about it today, it's hard to tell when Fable will actually release. This is yet another rumor that points to its development being a little bit on the slower side of things. So, if anything, I wouldn't go into 2023 necessarily expecting Fable to release. 2024 might be a safer bet here. If it releases in 2023, that's fantastic. That's an absolutely exciting and welcome surprise. But at the same time, if it goes into 2024 or beyond, at least you're kind of already expecting it and you won't be disappointed. In the meantime, from what we're hearing, Xbox does have plenty of other games that could be slated for 2023. We still got to get those official announcements. Of course, we know about Starfield and Redfall, but there's also some hints of some surprises along the way. And I think one expected game might be Avowed. We might also see Hellblade 2 this year. Of course, that's just speculation, but nonetheless, we are hearing there might be an Xbox showcase here in the coming months. So maybe, one way or the other, maybe we'll get some updates for some of these games sometime here soon. Now, we do also have a delay to talk about today that seems to be drawing some concern online, and that's for Hogwarts Legacy. Now don't worry, the Xbox Series, the PlayStation 5, and PC versions are still slated to release as expected. They're still on track for February 10th. But they did, however, push back the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and then the much-discussed Nintendo Switch version. Even more interesting about all this is that the Switch version got pushed back the most. Now, as for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, they're currently planned to release on April 4th, whereas the Switch version, that's coming quite a bit later on July 24th. Now, in most cases, I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to delays, as I firmly do believe that makes for a better overall in-game. I've said this time in and time again on the channel. If a game needs a delay to improve its quality, yeah, I'm all for it. And in this case, that doesn't change at all. If Hogwarts Legacy needs a little extra time to ensure it's a good game, by all means. But at the same time, it's pretty easy to see why in this particular case that this can be viewed as a red flag. I think that it was already kind of shocking as is that Hogwarts Legacy, this highly ambitious Harry Potter game, is coming to the Switch as a native experience. Not a cloud-based game, but a native game. You can see why there might be some skepticism here. But with all that said, we've seen in some cases that you can port some of these more ambitious games to the Switch. We've seen that with Doom Eternal. We've seen that with The Witcher 3. And there's a few other games out there as well. But there's definitely some skepticism in how Hogwarts Legacy will perform on a Switch. And with this delay here, it almost kind of signifies that they might be having problems with this specific version. And that's why they're taking so much extra time to work on a Switch port. I hope that's not the case. I hope this game turns out to be fantastic on the Switch. But I will say, with developers trying their hardest to port their games to the Switch, this is just yet another reason that it might almost be time for that eventual Switch successor. Maybe some of these more highly ambitious games will then have an easier time being ported over to their next platform. I know fans would absolutely love that, so yeah, that's just more reason that Switch successor might be needed sometime soon. At the same time, though, I mean, you can kind of say the same thing when it comes to the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. They're no longer releasing Hogwarts Legacy day and date with that next generation version. Truthfully, when I hear that, though, it definitely makes me think that it's time for some of these developers to move on to the Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 just completely. I think we're moving past that transition period by this point. But hey, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we'll let the game speak for itself, and outside of all the speculation, hopefully each version of the game performs well when they do eventually release. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though. With just so much commotion as of recent, I wanted to go and ask you all, who do you think will ultimately win in the Activision Blizzard acquisition case? And as you can see here, the vast majority, and the very, very vast majority of you all, do believe Microsoft will win this, with 84% of you all voting for them, while only 9% of you all voted for the FTC. Now, it seems like there's a lot of confidence in Microsoft here, and I think that there's a good reason for that. I think when us gamers hear some of the arguments made by the FTC, it kind of leaves us scratching our heads just a little bit. I mean, most of the things that they claim can easily be countered, as Microsoft have already kind of shown. If we want to talk about a monopoly, Xbox isn't even close to that, even after this acquisition. And they can prove that with how much PlayStation has dominated, especially last generation with the PlayStation 4. If they want to make it about consumers and Call of Duty's exclusivity, considering how popular that IP is, Microsoft has tried to work with the FTC by writing a contract ensuring Call of Duty will be available for more gamers, not less. I mean, there's just a lot of holes in the arguments made by the FTC. The only issue that I could see being a slight problem is Xbox Game Pass, because Microsoft has a little bit more of a foothold in that category. But even then, Microsoft can and will point out that Sony doesn't really try to compete in subscription services as much, because they have a different strategy where they look to sell their games for $70. And they've had immense success with that. They're actually one of the most successful publishers in that category. In Microsoft's words, there's multiple ways to have success in the game industry, and for something like Xbox Game Pass, they believe it's something regulators should encourage, as it's good for consumers and competition. Plus, Sony does have PlayStation Plus, which technically has more subscriptions across all tiers. So, Microsoft does have arguments that they can make there as well. And with all that in mind, I do tend to lean on the side of Microsoft here. I just think that there's too many counterpoints to the FTC's arguments. It's going to be very hard for them to prove their case. It's just not anti-competitive. And again, with the concern of Call of Duty, considering its popularity, it's not anti-consumer either, because it will remain multi-platform. At the end of the day, though, I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see. It's by no means a 100% certainty either which way, so things are going to get pretty heated and interesting from this point forward. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.